Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist of the Abyss, and this is my review for Kill La Kill, Episode 5. Now, this one starts off with the introduction of Tsumugu Kinagase, and right off the bat we learn that he's after Ryuko. Right? He's got this huge gun, he's got it pointed right at her. So, unfortunately for him, he chose to do it on the terrace where the gardening club has plants. So a bunch of members from the gardening club walk up to him, for plot reasons. Obviously, you can't kill Ryuko, especially in episode 5. Right? That's Satsuki's job. But they go up and stop him. They fight. They lose. Sumugu just dominates them, and with these needles, he takes them all out. Then he takes their life fibers afterwards, or at least the guy with the 2-star uniform. He takes his life fibers, and I don't know what he's going to do with them though, because he himself doesn't use life fibers. He has this grudge against them. We already know this because he's talking about how he doesn't want to listen to people who depend on life fibers, or he won't lose to people who depend on life fibers or something like that. So we know he's not a big fan of them, but he takes that one guy's life fibers anyway. So who knows what he does with them? But after this, we end up seeing Mako. She's been kidnapped yet again, which it's just a gag now at this point. She gets kidnapped again, and Riko's in the process of saving her. And she ends up doing it easily. And we also learn that she can shrink her scissor blade now. But because of that, because of how good she's gotten with her full life fiber synchronization and everything, she's dominating so much that she's just gotten cocky. And Senketsu realizes that. He tells her that her blood's gotten salty or something. So he criticizes her on that, and he's criticizing her on like her weight and everything, saying she's eating too many croquets and stuff. And it's funny because Mako still can't hear Senketsu, so she's just sitting here listening to Ryuko argue with herself. But like right in the process of this conversation, Mako gets shot by a bunch of needles, a bunch of them. And obviously this is Sumugu. He comes out of nowhere and says, like, oh, don't worry about her. I've hit like certain points in her body where when her all of her illnesses will be healed and her fatigue will be taken away and all this stuff. And she's like, oh, thanks, I guess. But Sumugu ends up attacking her. Senketsu tells her to run, but she doesn't do it in time, and she just gets dominated, really. And I like the fact that she could lose so easily to Sumugu, because after the fight she had with Satsuki, it was clear she was like at the top of the academy along with her. Like no one could beat her except for Satsuki. And you know that all the other clubs are going to be fighting her, but she's going to win because she's almost same level as Satsuki. So I wasn't really sure how the anime was going to handle that, but now that we know that there are people who could defeat Ryuko this easily, we know that there can be other people who can take her out as well. Other people from their group. But instead of just skipping ahead, I'll just stick to where I am right now. Sumugu's he's defeated Ryuko. She talks about how he's part of the pervert club. So she thinks that he's a student when he's not. But he tries to get her to take off her uniform, which is why she thinks he's in the pervert club. But she says no, and he says, "Oh well, I tried to warn you." And he's gonna go kill her. Then he gets this needle hits his hand or something, and he knows who it's from, so he leaves. And it turns out it's from Aikudo, Mikisugi. And he tells Sumugu to leave Ryuko alone and that this is a critical period. He says that Satsuki's captured, she has everywhere under her control except for the Kansai region. And that the goal of Ryuko's dad and everyone in Nudist Beach, the group that they're in, I'll just leave that there. But the goal of everyone is to stop Satsuki and the Kiryuins from getting all this territory and getting control of everywhere in Japan. And Sumugu says that Ryuko might end up being consumed by Senketsu and just turn into a monster even worse than Satsuki. Apparently there was this woman, Kinue, who thought that people who thought that people in clothing could be friends. If you were reading this out of context, you'd think this was the stupidest show ever. She thought that people in clothing could be friends, that they could get along, but she ended up being betrayed by clothing and probably dying or something, or losing control and being killed by someone. And Sumugu thinks that that's going to happen to Ryuko. And we learn that he has a debt to Mikisugi, but even though he's willing to do anything for him, he isn't willing to budge on the issue with Ryuko. So then he leaves. And after this, we go to Mako and Mataru's house. Ryuko's kind of disappointed in herself. She's kind of depressed because of how badly she got dominated. Mako, it turns out what Tsumugu said was true. She did get healed of all of her fatigue and stuff, and she felt so good that she went and bought all this food and put it on her dad's tab. And he says that, it's fine. If I ever need money, I can just sell Mataro's organs. The dad's willing to sell his kid's organs, and the mom's willing to let people beat her children for just because. This family is, oh my god. Moving on. There's this joke in there that Senketsu, he can't really deal with guts. He has psychological damage, I guess, from when Guts was carrying him. He was like, oh, don't bite me, don't slobber over me, or stuff like that. So yeah, he's pretty much scared of Guts now. But Ryuko ends up leaving the dinner table, saying she's done for the night, and we go to Satsuki and the Elite Four, or the four elites of the student council. And we learn that Sumugu is part of this anti-uniform guerrilla unit and this guerrilla group. And I'm assuming that's what Nudist Beach is, and he's not just part of two different groups. And we also learn that his needles have the ability to sever the connection between a body and life fibers. So that's an interesting power, especially if multiple people have this power, which I'm assuming multiple people do have this power. Because it's not like it's a power he has, it's a power that these items have, and the items came from Nudist Beach. Because, if I recall, Mikisugi said to Sumugu that if he continued down the path he's going on, all the higher-ups in Nudist Beach would take all his weapons away. So this entire group has weapons like this, so they're a huge threat. And Nonon, she decides that she's going to handle the situation, especially since it was the gardening club that was attacked, because she's the chair of the non-athletic committee, and the gardening club is a non-athletic club. So there's that. But also, just a side note, Nonon's voice is incredibly annoying. It's really annoying. Whenever she opens her mouth, I just have to shake my head. Whatever. We go back to Senketsu and Ryuko. I think it's the next day at this point. And Senketsu's telling Ryuko that she shouldn't wear him. She should leave and go to school wearing her normal. Well, she doesn't have a normal uniform, but the clothes she wore in episode 1, I guess. He says that for her safety, it's best that she just leave him behind because Sumugu's after him, not her. So, this entire conversation is actually pretty interesting, not because of what they're saying, but because of Mako and Mataro and their parents watching the whole thing. They're talking about how crazy she is, and their dad says, if it wasn't for her being this crazy, she'd actually be a pretty nice girl, you know. And her mom's talking about how she has no friends and how it's sad that her uniform is her only friend. So that's funny, but she decides to leave with Senketsu anyway, and she's standing at the front gate of the school. She's waiting for Sumugu, and during this point, she says that Senketsu is just a piece of clothing, which is interesting because that's obviously not the case. He's not just a piece of clothing. This is obvious at this point after what we've seen so far in the series. So it was interesting to hear her say that, whether she meant it or not. It was still an interesting line to say. I don't know if that'll come up again later, like what her current thoughts on Senketsu are. But even if they were like that, they probably changed at the end of the episode. But I'll get to that soon. Sumugu ends up showing up, and Ryuko transforms. They start fighting, and it's actually a pretty cool fight because Sumugu, while he's weaker, I guess you could say, than Ryuko, he's smarter and has better strategy, so he's able to like take advantage of her anyway, which is an interesting trait of Sumugu actually, because he's able to set up all these traps, and you have no clue how he sets them up. Like it's incredible. It's crazy how many traps he can set up in such a short period of time. It's incredible. But while they're in the middle of fighting, a bunch of small fry, non-athletic clubs show up. They interrupt the fight, and we see Nonon talking with Inamuta, and apparently she's known Satsuki the longest, so she knows what Satsuki's thinking, and she wants pretty much. She's not supposed to really take care of Sumugu. She's just supposed to help gather data on him. Inamuta's the one who's actually going to be gathering the data, but it's Nonon's job to make sure that the data he gets is the right data. That way Satsuki will be able to prepare for the future battle she'll have against Nudist Beach. But, just a side note, Nonon is a musician. So, I remember I said that a few weeks ago because of the opening. So that's confirmation. She is a musician, and it's probably part of what her power revolves around. But, Ryuko and Sumugu aren't there anymore. Ryuko's running away. Sumugu's have this, like, path of destruction, and you see all these people who have been taken out. It's like even Kumagawa from Adaka Box couldn't have done that good a job at taking out people, but Sumugu outdoes Kumagawa. He takes a bunch of people out while still leaving enough traps for Ryuko, and it gets to the point where Senketsu can't maintain the synchronization because Ryuko's been shot by a bunch of needles. And this is when Sumugu comes flying through the window, and he just kicks her through the freaking. I don't know if the door was open or closed or not, but he kicks her through the door into the bathroom. And he goes in and he starts kicking her some more and beating her up more. I was like, dang. That caught me by surprise. Usually anime try to shy away from fights between guys and girls, and they try to make it guy on guy fights and girl on girl fights, but they really Trigger just does not care at this point. Neither does Sumugu. But he's doing the same thing he was before, trying to get Ryuko to give up Senketsu. This is when we actually learn about Kinoue being betrayed by clothing, and Sumugu tells Ryuko that the same thing is going to happen to her, which she doesn't believe. And Senketsu, he tries to save Ryuko actually, because Sumugu is just going to kill her. So Senketsu kind of deattaches himself from her and tries to save Ryuko from the shots of the needles and everything. But Sumugu misunderstands this. He thinks that Senketsu is abandoning her instead of trying to save her, and he's telling Ryuko that life fibers are parasites. When it's clear to Ryuko that that's not the case because she can hear Senketsu, so she knows that he was trying to save her. Then Mako comes out of nowhere with her weekly monologue, I guess, because she's pretty much going to have a monologue every episode. And she's talking about all this stuff like how much her family is creeped out by Ryuko, and she even says that before she met Ryuko, her only friends were in her head, which isn't exactly something I would admit to, but whatever. She ends up leaving after a few comedic moments, and Senketsu, he like projects himself onto Tsumugu and threatens him. And once Sumugu actually hears Senketsu's voice, he starts to realize that Senketsu is actually alive, and that he actually was trying to save Ryuko. But at this point, Nonon and some other club members come in. Sumugu, his clothes kind of act the way that the Kamui do when they activate and do the synchronization. They kind of just blow up and everything, and he escapes with Ryuko, pretty much. He's talking with Aikudu at the end of the episode, and he says he's going to give her one chance, and if he senses that anything bad's going to happen, he's just going to kill her and finish what he started. But we also have this scene with Satsuki. It turns out that Nono was right when she was predicting what Satsuki really wanted, and Inamuto was able to analyze Sumugu and get all the necessary data from him. So Satsuki, she's definitely planning on taking Sumugu out, either that or just taking out all of Nudist Beach. But personally, I'd like to see a fight between Sumugu and Satsuki. Satsuki had this great fight with Ryuko, but Sumugu dominated Ryuko on 2 different occasions. So seeing Sumugu, it would seem like Sumugu is stronger than Satsuki, or at least on her level. So I would actually like to see that fight. But hopefully we do get to see it. Hopefully, there's still, I don't know how many episodes this series is going to have. I'm hoping it's like 24 to 26, maybe even 22. I'd be satisfied with. But if it's only 12 or 13, I guess I'll just deal with it. But I would in the future of the series, I do want to see this fight, a fight between Sumugu and Satsuki. But and that's it for the episode. The preview showed that the next episode is going to focus a lot on Uzu Sanagayama. He's the chair of the athletic committee, one of the 4 elites of the student council, and he has this confrontation with Satsuki. Like, I don't know what the situation was exactly, but Satsuki had a robe on. She was pointing her finger in Uzu's face, or pointing her sword or something. I don't really remember that clearly, but there's some confrontation between him and Satsuki. And we see that he's actually going to fight Ryuko. We see, because he has that weapon, like, pole, staff, weapon, pipe thing. And we see that same weapon, like, we don't see Uzu swinging it, but we see Ryuko blocking it. So, that's something to look forward to for next episode. So I think next episode's going to be great, but as for this episode, I'll give this one an 8.5 out of 10. It was better than good, but not quite great. There were too many parts that were just meh, like just okay. But obviously the best parts were the ones involving Sumugu and Ryuko. So, and those were good. Like, especially the scene where Sumugu just drop kicks Ryuko, starts just beating on her, and then we see that development with Ryuko and how she realizes how much Senketsu was trying to help her out and stuff. So I'll give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. But yeah, that's it for this review. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.